I was about 14 years old when my family had just moved to a new town. I was also lucky enough to make a fast friend at my new school, and we subsequently made plans to go trick-or-treating together since it was coming up to Halloween night. Because we were 14 and lived in a fairly safe neighborhood, my parents told us that they didn't think I needed a chaperone that year. So while everything was going great and we were having fun, getting some solid candy, it was kind of cool just walking around on our own, feeling sort of grown up. We call at one house, and this middle-aged man opened the door. He seemed happy to see my new friend and me, so I assumed we were in for some good candy. I don't actually remember what candy he handed out to us, but I do remember what happened next. He asked us to come inside, which is weird, but we really wanted candy, so I guess we were dumb enough to take the bait. He disappears for a moment, and I kind of assume he was going off to get us some candy, but when he re-emerges, he doesn't have any, only a camera in his hand. Then he asked if he could take a picture of us, explaining that he liked to take photos of the kids every Halloween because he loved seeing the costumes, how he was something of a collector. At this point, even being a fairly naive 14-year-old, I got weirded out, yet knew it was best not to upset the man and let him take the picture, and then we could leave. So, he takes the photo of us, waits for the Polaroid to come out, then hands us a pen, asking us to sign our names on the back. Me and my friend did as we were told, but although we'd been dumb enough to actually go into the guy's house with him, we weren't dumb enough to sign our actual names. So we wrote fake ones on the back just to satisfy him. Only then were we allowed to leave with the candy he gave us after we signed. I don't know if the guy was an actual child molester or anything. There were no run-ins with him and nothing in the way of rumors going around town, but I still get creeped out thinking about what he did with that photo of me. This isn't just my scariest trick-or-treating story. This is the story of the scariest thing to have happened to me in my entire life. It's not some dumb story about ghosties or ghoulies or anything supernatural like that. It's something very real and very tangible that left me seriously messed up for a long, long time. My parents arranged counseling sessions for me to help deal with it, and I can't say those didn't help a little. But what happened that Halloween night has stayed with me for my whole life, and every single year without fail, I think about it a little. Like a lot of suburban neighborhoods here on the east coast of the US, Halloween decorations have become something of an art form. I remember when decorations used to be confined to just a pumpkin and maybe a few things pinned to a front door, but now it's a whole different ballgame, with lawns overflowing with orange-colored decor, even the occasional roof being covered in those fake spiderweb things. Things have gotten pretty intense too. Like last year I saw how someone had actually dug up a patch of their own well-preened front lawn to make like a fake grave type thing that had a skeletal hand sticking out of it. It's been that way for a few years now, and it's key to how my story even happened in the first place. On the night in question, me and a friend of mine were wandering around our neighborhood in costume, collecting as much candy as possible. We come to this one particular house that's totally decked out in all kinds of Halloween-themed decorations. I mean, it was honestly pretty impressive how much effort the family had put into it, and if they were so into Halloween that they'd go to such lengths to decorate their home, there was a decent chance they'd be hella generous while giving out candy. So, me and my buddy started walking up their pathway all slow, just admiring all the decor as we went. Things got progressively spookier as we went, but nothing could compare to the scene we saw as we got close to the front door, and that buddy of mine spied through the front window of the house. Inside, the entire front room had been turned into a pure vision of hell. This family was indeed the most dedicated set of Halloween decorators we'd ever come across. It appeared that they'd set up an actual sort of murder scene. The whole room was trashed, with ornaments strewn over the room, china plates smashed to smithereens with pieces laying all over the carpet. There was blood everywhere too, splashed all over the couch along with bloody handprints on the walls. and in the middle of the room, laying on the carpet, was the most convincing looking dead body I'd ever seen. The family had done a decent job of obscuring the mannequin, or whatever it was, by having it pretty much caked in blood and gore, soaked, torn up clothing. It was maybe a little too much for Halloween though. Like, I've always been something of a scary movie fan, but even I couldn't stomach to look at it for very long, so I moved up to the front door and began ringing the doorbell. I rang once, then twice, but no one answered. And all the while, my buddy is just staring through the front window, white as a sheet. I try a third time, banging on the door extra loud just in case the doorbell happened to be broken or something. And still my buddy is just gawping through the front window. I remember him saying something like, "God, it just looks so real," before I finally walk over and start trying to drag him away from the window before he vomited or something. The homeowners would certainly not be giving us any candy if he went and made a big old throw-up mess on their property. Only right as I'm doing so, I happen to look through the window just in time to see one of the TV room doors opening. In walked a man who looked like he'd been crying, like a whole lot too, and in his hands were these big plastic trash bags. We're only peeking in from the edge of the window, so he didn't see us right away, but we watched as he walks over to the mannequin thing and kneels down beside it. He reaches out to touch the face of the thing, and that's when I see how he's got these rubber gloves on too, the kind you use for washing up. I get that he didn't want to get any of the corn syrup, blood, or whatever on his hands, and I start kind of wondering how he's going to get the stains out of the carpet. I mean, that's real dedication to ruin your own upholstery all in the name of Halloween decorations. That's when it hit me. We're not looking at Halloween decorations. The body lying on the carpet isn't a mannequin, and it's not corn syrup that's on the walls. It's real blood, a real body. We're not looking at a decorative setup. We're looking at an actual murder scene. My buddy just says one word, "Dude," loud enough for the guy inside to hear us. His head spins towards the window, these big tear-stained eyes just focusing on the little spot we're peering in from, and the sad look in his eyes turn to one of pure shock and anger. We lock eyes for a moment, and I feel my heart rate go into overdrive, 1,000 terrified thoughts flashing in my mind all at once. Then, the man is up on his feet again, storming out of the TV room and towards what I could only guess was the front door. Me and my buddy just sprint back down the path, running as fast as we can as we hear the front door open behind us. I look back briefly to see the man, clothes soaked in blood, chasing us out into the dark street. He was bigger than us, faster than us, and had absolutely no intention of letting us get away to report what we'd seen. I can't describe the kind of fear I felt, knowing it was only a matter of seconds before he caught up with us, and when he did, we'd probably suffer the same fate as whoever it was lying on the carpet back in his house. But as luck would have it, the streets were still pretty busy with trick-or-treaters at that hour, and he must have realized that chasing a pair of kids, still covered in blood, would arouse way too much suspicion. Even if it was Halloween, and people might mistake the real blood for fakery, just like we'd done in the first few minutes of peering through the front window, we ran and ran, all the way back to my parents' house where we begged them to call the police. At first my parents figured that our imaginations had just gotten the better of us, and dismissed our claims that we'd seen an actual murder scene as pure fantasy. In the end, my dad insisted on seeing the scene for himself before calling the cops out, and even if the idea of going back there sent me into fits of terror, he wouldn't take no for an answer. I had horrible visions of the bloodied man just sticking a shotgun through his front door and blowing my dad away so that there'd be no witnesses, and the whole walk round to the murder house, I was absolutely terrified. But as we got closer, we started to see a bunch of blue flashing lights. It was only then that Dad actually took me seriously, and as we edged around a corner and saw a bunch of cop cars sitting outside the murder house, he realized I had been telling the truth. I figure someone who had saw him chasing us briefly had the wherewithal to call the police before us, and I thank God that they did, because I don't know if I'd even been writing this if we'd actually been able to walk back up that pathway and back towards the house. It was all over the papers for the next few days, how this guy had stabbed his wife to death, and rumors went around that he'd found out she was cheating on him or something, but I never really got those confirmed or not, so only God knows what actually caused him to snap and murder her. Like I said, I had to have a great deal of therapy throughout my teenage years to help me get over what I saw that night, and or a long, long time. I saw that body in my nightmares. In the worst of them, me and my buddy would be looking through the window, and the body would rise up into a sitting position before the woman screamed to us to help her, blood pouring from her cut open mouth as she did so. And some others, the guy would catch us, drag us back into the house, then lay us on the carpet next to the body before taking a knife to us, one at a time. It took a while, but I got past it. Yet Halloween remains a time of year when I can't quite keep those memories out of my head. A time of year when others pretend to be haunted by ghosts and whatnot, whereas I'm actually haunted by the sight of that poor woman lying on the carpet, covered in blood. On Halloween night, back when I was in the 8th grade, 27 now, my friend Kayla and I were giddy with excitement, messing around and getting dressed up in our costumes. I'm not even gonna say what we were for that Halloween, as it's too cringy. Anyway, this night was a special night for us girls, because this was going to be the last year for us to go trick-or-treating. We thought that once we became freshmen in high school, trick-or-treating would be too childish for the new, cool high school students to be participating in. So we were going all out, especially with the amount of candy, grabbing pillowcases that we planned to fill entirely. Practically skipped out my front door ready to begin, in our opinion, the greatest night and holiday of the year. We didn't waste any time going door to door, street after street, that we didn't even realize that hours had passed. Back during this time, the trick-or-treating time was a hell of a lot longer than the 2 or 3 hours it is now. Back then it just ended when the kids decided to end it. I can remember one year my sister, Kayla, and I stayed out almost till 11 p.m. Most of the houses would have already stopped answering their doors, but there was always a few houses that were still willing to pass out candy. I didn't even think to look at the time until I noticed that there were less and less kids each street we came to. So when I looked at my phone, I said to Kayla, "Holy shit, it's 9:30. We should probably get back to my house. We can watch a movie and stuff ourselves with this," proudly lifting up my pillowcase that was at least more than a halfway full. We slowly start walking back towards my house, and as we were passing each street, we noticed how eerily quiet it had gotten, seemingly out of nowhere. People were turning off their porch lights, signaling they were not going to be passing out any more candy. Now I was a paranoid person back then, and I'm still a paranoid person to this day, probably even more so now. So when I got that feeling, that chill that runs up your back and your shoulders tense up, something is off, I thought to myself. I look side to side and get an urge to look behind me. I slowly turned my head around, looking over my shoulder, and when I saw it nearly made me piss myself. About 4 houses down from us was Michael Myers, or someone dressed as Michael Myers, I should say, who was slowly walking behind us. But to me, at that time, it might as well be the real Michael Myers. He stopped, staring back at me, not moving any muscle, just staring. Now this would be creepy to anyone, but this was literally my worst fucking nightmare. My number one childhood fear just so happens to be Michael Myers. A little backstory. When I was about 4, my mom was busy cleaning the kitchen as I sat in the living room playing with my toys with the TV going in the background. The creepy music had caught my attention, so I started glancing up at the movie while playing with my toys. I grew less and less interested in my toys and had my eyes glued to the TV, already starting to grow nervous and scared by just the music alone. You know the part in the movie where Michael Myers pops out of the closet, grabbing a hold of the victim and lifting him up in the air against the wall, as his victim desperately tries to break free, but is paralyzed with fear? And then Michael pulls back the knife and brutally stabs the guy to the wall, pinning him to the wall and in the air. Well, my 4-year-old self had never seen something so gruesome and altogether just absolutely terrifying. And at that age, I believed it was real. In my 4-year-old mind, this was really happening to someone. My eyes bulged out of my head, instantly breaking out into tears, literally screaming my head off. His mask, the brutality, seeing someone being stabbed in this heinous murder, it blew my mind, and all at once, I felt so anxious, scared, sad, just panicking. My mom comes rushing over, frantically trying to figure out what's wrong, scooping me up in her arms, and I was still screaming and pointing at the TV. By then the movie continued to the part where Michael Myers is dressed up with the sheet over his body, with the glasses on over the sheet that he stole off the body of the victim, obviously pretending to be the guy he just murdered. The sheet freaked me out even more than Michael's mask. Watching the masked killer walk slowly closer and closer up behind the girl on the phone, and I clung to my mom, sobbing and burying my face into her shoulder. She looked over at the TV saying, "Oh my God, how the hell did this get on?" She began trying to soothe me as she turned off the channel. I cried for at least another hour or more, just absolutely traumatized. After that incident, I couldn't sleep at all, especially alone in my bed, and absolutely could not stand the dark. I knocked on my parents' bedroom door for months, begging them to let me sleep in their bed with them, or I swear, in my head, I was convinced he was going to come down the dark hallway, silently creeping into my room, and stab me in my sleep. I didn't get over my fear of Michael Myers until I was in my early 20s. So being in 8th grade, walking down a dark street, no one around besides just Kay and I, and seeing my absolutely worst fucking nightmare walking slowly behind us, I swear I thought I was going to pass out. I looked over at Kayla, my voice trembling, and whispered, "There's somebody following us. He's dressed as Michael Myers. About 4 houses down. Pick up the pace and do not start running." Kayla turned slightly, looking over her shoulder, and snapped her head back forward. "What the hell? That's so creepy." "Well, we got 2 blocks to go. We'll see if he follows us when we turn." I nod, a million thoughts going through my head. Maybe I'm overreacting. It is Halloween after all. But why is he alone? And to follow 2 young girls? When we get to my street, I glance behind me, and I swear my heart stopped in that moment. He wasn't behind us anymore. I panicked, darting my eyes all around me. Oh God, where did he go? He's gone! Kayla turns around, stopping in her tracks, squinting her eyes, trying to scan the area. Maybe he turned down a different street. He probably wasn't even following us to begin with, she said as she spun back around, heading down the street again. And then I spotted him. He stepped out from behind a tree, but now he was only 2 houses away. He started walking towards us, gaining on us as I stood there frozen in fear. I screamed, "Go!" Kayla whipped around. "Holy shit! Oh my God, oh my God!" We shrieked as we started sprinting the rest of the way, but then I feel my legs start to wobble. Oh God, please no, this can't be real, it just can't be, I thought to myself, somewhat in denial that this was actually happening. Could this really be happening? In that moment I knew I had one goal, and that was to make it through my front door. We sprint up the driveway. Both of us practically crashed into my front door, frantically turning the doorknob, and then my heart dropped. The door was locked. I'm pounding and pounding on the door, screaming for somebody to please hurry and open the door. I look behind me and there he is, stepping onto the driveway, still heading straight for us. "Where is everybody? Please! Mom, help us!" I glance back behind me, and he's gone. I went silent, listening intently for any noise when all of a sudden, he slowly came around the side of my house, just a few feet away. This means he walked around the left side of my house, through my backyard, and came around the right side of my house. I screamed while practically falling through the door. My mom looked at us like we were insane, and I yelled, "Close the door!" Kayla slammed it shut and looks out the window. "Where is he? Where did he go?" Kayla said, running to look out the front living room windows. Who? What are you talking about? My mom said, looking at me completely confused. Someone was following us. It was someone dressed as Michael Myers. No, don't! I yelled as my mom opened the door and stepped outside, peering around the front yard. She stepped out to the driveway. I nervously watched through the screen door. She turned and yelled back to me. Well, there's no one here now. It may have just been someone messing with you. This thought did cross my mind. It is Halloween after all. To think a grown man, I'm assuming, is walking around alone, messing with two young girls, stalking them for so long that it's just creepy. I have to say, since I'm older now, and have seen the movies at least 1,000,000 times, that stalker guy was 100% spot on with exactly how Michael is in the movies. The walking slowly but gaining on us so fast at the same time, disappearing and popping up out of nowhere. Like I said, it may as well have been the real Michael Myers. But also the fact that this scenario was a #1 childhood fear of mine, that I've had multiple nightmares about. And even though I'm much older now, reminiscing that night still gives me chills to this day. It's just, I can't help but wonder if it was really a good prank gone too far, or if that person had more sinister intentions in store for us.